What's going on, everyone? You're listening to the Brazos Sports PrepsCast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by Abigail Ochoa. Abigail, Wednesday morning, how are we feeling? Week 9 of the season. We're rolling strong.
Oh my goodness, week 9 already. I'm doing good. Astros won last night, tied in the series. It's always nice have football, baseball at the same time. But yeah, I'm doing great. Ready to get this week going a little bit. We got a Thursday game here, so always exciting.
Well, everyone in Houston's talking about that Astros offense, but let's talk about that College Station defense. We'll start with that. We talk a lot about the explosiveness and the playmaking ability that the Cougars have on their offense. I mean, we've listed the weapons. We know what they're about. But their defense has been one of the most dominant units in the entire state this season. College Station's allowing just 6.3 points and 176 yards per game. And that domination was seen last Friday. They shut out Cleveland. Our friend John Clendenin had them down for allowing 0 yards. The coaching staff at College Station said they allowed 7. Whether it was 0 or it's 7, the fact remains. That is about as dominant of a performance as you're going to see. Abigail, you cover the Cougars pretty regularly. What is it about that unit that just makes them so strong?
They're so physical and they really don't give anybody room to breathe. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess the perfect example of that is, last week when I was talking to defensive coordinator Chance Locklear, he described Jackson Slinker as like accelerating if a receiver has any room or if a runner has any room, Jackson Slinker kind of just accelerates and is able to make that tackle whenever that. And I think that's a perfect example of like everybody's able to do that. and so they're able to get through these guys so fast. If somebody happens to get through the line, which is pretty hard to do because they have a great D line, but somebody is able to, they have 4 or 5 guys out there in the backfield who are able to really just, they're so physical. Their tackles are amazing. They're able to make plays, whether that's, forcing a fumble or things like that. But yeah, they're just so physical. When you have multiple guys out there doing the same thing, it's pretty hard to beat them. And I think Locklear and the staff have done a great job this year, especially with these guys. I truly believe that it's a culmination of all these guys growing up in this program. This is, some guys, this is their 3rd year on varsity. They're used to this, and they're used to the way that they're being coached, and I think that helps a lot. These seniors have seen their when they were underclassmen, these guys, were going to state and they were making it far in the playoffs, and I think they've seen that their whole lives, and I think it's really helped right now.
Yeah, we talk about how good Jackson Slinker is. We know Harrison Robinson. I mean, he was an all BV pick last year. They've got a pretty salty secondary, but how about that defensive line with Connor Lindgren, Caleb Scow, and Corbin Johnson? I mean, just up front, they're really strong, and it seems like they've got the size too.
For sure. They're really great. Great guys to have up there in the front. College Station right now is only allowing about 85 rushing yards per game. Those 3 guys, Lindgren, Scow, and Johnson, have a combined 7 sacks. I mean, the trio is no joke when you think about it. And I'll just list some stats right now from them. Lindgren has 35 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback pressures. Scow has 37 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback pressures, and Johnson has 30 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback pressures. I mean, those are pretty good numbers to have right now, I believe. And, I won't be surprised if we see 1 or 2 of these guys on the all-BV team when we get there. But they, Slinker mentioned it last week as well. They really give their linebackers room to move. And I think that really causes a ripple effect. Like we said, once you get, if somebody does get past them, they have those guys who have, who are able to see, they're able to make some plays there. If somebody happens to get over there. But, the defense they forced 5 interceptions 7 forced fumbles. I mean, they're really on a roll here. And I think it really starts with that trio up there in the front.
Well, we mentioned, I think, was it last week or the week before, that College Station hadn't allowed more than 50 points total on the season.
Right.
You think the Cougars are going to keep that up this week and maybe even next week? I mean, they're playing a Caney Creek team that they haven't won a game this year.
Yeah, they have won one game, but it was
They
I
won
think
one
it was
game. My bad.
I think it was non-district. But yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that College Station. I'll be surprised if it's not similar to last week against Cleveland, where it's a 70-0 score. Caney Creek is averaging about 7.4 points per game. They're 1-6 overall this season. They were shut out by New Caney and Magnolia. And we saw what College Station was able to do against those two teams. So I see something similar happening, what happened against Cleveland. And College Station, let's not forget, they still have Waller next week, who hasn't been doing that great this season, who's been struggling a little bit. So, I mean, they have a chance to do it 2 weeks in a row. And I think that's really going to help them. Obviously, they get Mag West at the end there, which will be a tough test, like we've talked about. But yeah, I think there's no doubt that they can do that again this week.
Well, moving along, we talk about there how College Station's defense hasn't really been challenged, but these last couple of weeks. But can anyone challenge Franklin at all? I mean, Let's talk about those Franklin lines for a minute. We knew going into the season that they were the state favorite in 3A Division II, but I mean, they've probably been more dominant than we likely would have expected. I mean, you look at their season, and aside from that 7-point road win over Lorena, who, by the way, is state ranked in 3A Division I and is one of the state favorites in that division, nobody's come close to keeping pace with Franklin. They've outscored their district opponents 253-38. That's an average victory of 63-10. Franklin can clinch the top seed in the playoffs this Friday with a win over Buffalo, who's kind of having a down year, 2-5 overall. And they're only a season removed from having a 4th-round playoff appearance, where you were at that game, I believe, when they had to try and Franklin had to beat them twice to get to the state semifinals. Is that right?
They did, yeah. And I think if Buffalo wasn't having the year that they're having so far, at least, this game would have been huge. I mean, this would have been something that we would have been talking about of can Buffalo, get that revenge that I'm sure that they want on Franklin. This year, I'm not so sure just how Franklin's been playing, but they did have to face each other twice last year, which is, one of few teams that Franklin had to do that with. But yeah, different time this year around.
So the question remains, Abigail, when will we see the Lions challenged?
Yeah, I think my answer in the beginning of the season probably would have been different from now. Like I mentioned, Buffalo would have been in there. Lexington might have been in there had we had Jared Kerr this whole time. Their record could be a little bit better if they had maybe had him, or even Rogers would be games to look out for. Especially with Buffalo being later in the season. Like I said, I would have obviously counted them as a contender here to beat Franklin, but it'll be a while before Franklin is able to really get a team, I believe, that's really going to push them, really going to challenge them. It's going to be a game like Lorena in the beginning, where they narrowly escape. But it's crazy to think that might not come until rounds and rounds into the playoffs. But that's the road that Franklin is going down right now, and I think that's the road that they want to stay at. The things, we don't talk about it a lot, obviously, but Mark Fannin, the things that he's been able to do with his team, I mean, this is the second year as head coach. It's been pretty amazing. They go to state his first year. They're on the track to go to state again. They're just dismantling teams at any chance they get. Their defense is amazing. Their offense has so many guys that they can turn to. It almost seems unfair sometimes about the amount of guys that can really make plays for them. Last year, Franklin had to overcome a lot to make it to state. Like we said, they had to beat Lexington twice. They had to beat Buffalo twice. They played Wascom team. That was great. And I think think this year, for them, it probably is really nice that it's almost a given that they will make that trip to Arlington in December. And I think based on last year and this year, I think they've earned that. So it'll be really fun to see once we start getting more into the playoffs who really is able to challenge them. But yeah, it's been a good ride so far for them.
Yeah, as it stands, nobody in Region 4 in 3A Division 2 ranked in the top 10. They played Wascom in that state semifinal game you were at. That was a really good game.
Yeah.
Maybe see a
Yeah.
rematch in round 5. Newton, West Rusk. I mean, they're all in the top 10 in Region 3. And so Region 3 is going to be a dogfight.
Yeah.
When you think about that, you got Elysian Fields over there. So yeah, I mean,
It's fun.
yeah, I mean, if Franklin can get to that 5th round and win, I mean, you're looking at some really good games potentially between any of the 3 or 4 that we just mentioned. Not to mention, hey, maybe they get a rematch against Canadian, or maybe this is Gunter's year and they're able to get to that state championship. They run that wacky offense with the little pistol option up there north of Dallas, but yeah.
Yeah, I think oh, sorry.
No, you
I
got it.
think I saw something. Dave Campbell, they put out like who would be in the state title game right now if the season ended right here, and I think it was Franklin and Gunter for 3A. But so that would be exciting either way. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see who they match up with.
Moving along, let's look at A&M Consolidated. Man, oh man, the Tigers lost in kind of a tragic way last Friday. Couldn't finish against Montgomery in a game that was honestly might decide the district championship at this point. You know, we talked last week. Consol was going to be out with Brody Daniel, their quarterback. Still not certain if he's going to play this week against Fulshire, recovering from that head injury. So Will Hargett, the freshman, he got the nod, first varsity start in a really big game. He got a lot better as the game went on. Coach Fedora set him up for success, completing some simple throws on some screens. Fedora said he liked the communication that he had with him. And give Consol credit. They kind of came out to a slow start. Montgomery got up, I think it was 14-0. But Consol came right back, and they took the lead in the 4th quarter. But Jalen Washington, I mean, that guy's just a gamer. He just barreled through their defense and scored 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter. If Will Hargett is the guy this week, we'll see what kind of growth is made from game 1 to game 2 as the starter. That's where I'll be Friday night. I feel like that you'll see some growth. I feel like coaches normally say the biggest growth they see from guys is from that first game to the second. But this is a sneaky road game against Fulshire, and a win on Friday puts the Tigers in the playoffs. Abigail, you saw Fulshire last Friday against Rudder. Where's kind of the strength of this Chargers team and what Consol is going to be going against on Friday?
Yeah, like you mentioned, Fulshire is really sneaky. I think Montgomery is too. The fact that they're at the top of the district standings, undefeated, is not something anybody expected at this time of the season. But yeah, back to Fulshire, the strength of that Chargers team is their defense, no doubt. Last week, I'm not sure how they are now, but they were the number 1 defense in the district. You can always see those stats on paper and think, okay, well, those are pretty good numbers. But seeing them in action really solidified that, I think, for me. They stopped Rudder, which is the number 1 offense in the district, twice at the 3-yard line. It was pretty amazing. One time it was a fumble. One time EJ Ezar threw an interception in the end zone. They're strong all over. That defense is pretty amazing. They have a really good defensive back, Maverick Stromberg, I believe is his name. He intercepted Ezar twice. They're just really physical. They're really fast. They're able to get to your guys. And to be able to stop Rudder twice at the 3-yard line is a pretty impressive feat for looking at what Rudder's been able to do this season offensively. So I think the defense is for sure something that the Tigers need to watch out for. Their offense isn't as strong, I would say, when you compare the two. But what Parker and Tyjae Williams have been able to do, or what they were able to do against Rudder, was pretty impressive. I think the Rangers defense obviously won that matchup. They won that game for them. But if we look, if maybe Rudder had missed that field goal in the second half, if if they had if Fulcher had scored maybe a little bit earlier than the two that they did in the second half, I think it would have been a different game. It would have changed things. They were still able to push Rudder's defense even at the end to get to 12, 17-12 was the final score. So I think it'll be a tough test for Consol, especially if Brody is still out. But like you said, hopefully we'll see, Will, obviously that's a tough spot to go into. You're a freshman, you're coming in at a crucial time for your team, with the quarterback out. But I think Fulcher is really sneaky. They're sneakily good. And so I think it'll be a pretty big test for Consol here.
Yeah, and Coach Fedora said it. A win this week makes next week's game important too for seeding purposes. Playing against Rudder. Rudder's, I think, 3-1 in the district. They're off this week, of course, and so definitely a big one because that makes next week you're playing for second or third place, and that's the difference between a first round playoff game at home or taking a long bus ride to East Texas, which Consol had to do last year going to Pine Tree, and they weren't able to win. So that's a game, Rudder trying to make the playoffs for the first time, but hey, looking ahead, I mean, if Rudder's able to upset Consol next week, I mean, get their first ever win over the Tigers in school history, I mean, you're looking at not only making the playoffs, you get a home game that first round. That would be huge for Coach Izar's crew. So we will for sure be keeping an eye on that. That's probably most of what we'll talk about next week. I have a feeling. 100%. Well, here comes Brian. The Vikings, Abigail, got a big road win over Killeen on Thursday. They're in a four-way tie for third place in 12-6A. Interesting. Belton has the tiebreaker over Bryan, beating them in overtime, of course, earlier this year. But the Vikings have the tiebreaker over Killeen Shoemaker. Here we go, Abigail. I mean, we were waiting on it, and we kind of knew if Bryan could put it together, they've got this stretch of games where they could make a run at it, and here we go.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, Bryan showed some great things on Thursday. He scored 21 unanswered points to be clean. Dwayne Ballhill had a run, and then he returned a fumble for 45 yards for another score. I mean, that's just exactly what needs to happen for Bryan. And we talked about it. Their offense really needed to get going. They needed to get some of that fire back. And I think with Tate Allen there as quarterback, they've really been able to do that. All the guys are kind of rallying around him, helping him out. Since he's a sophomore, but I really think that with the offense getting things together, we know what their defense can do, and we're starting to see that kind of come to life as well. The defense can't do it alone, so I think it's really nice having this offense really come together, find that spark, and they still have a chance to make the playoffs, which is something I think in the beginning of the season we weren't sure if that was possible. They were able to push Belton, and I'm sure they're like, why couldn't we get that Belton win in overtime? I'm sure that's like something that's hard for them to really understand. But I think they have Copper's Cove, who's 1-3, and then they play Ellison, who's 2-2 before Harker Heights, obviously. But they still have a chance here, and I think that's an amazing thing for the Vikings. They have some of that hope alive, and I think they might be able to do it. So it'll be fun to see the rest of the season kind of play out.
Yep, Vikings going for that third straight win. Definitely a favorable matchup against the Bulldogs this week. Win puts them in the top half of the district. Probably one win away from clinching a playoff spot too. All right, Abigail, let's go to the area. What was one game that caught your eye last week?
So Snook, they beat Somerville, which I can't remember which team I picked to win, but I think I might have picked Somerville. Snook was projected to win by 2, but you know, they kind of get a little bit farther there with Somerville. A great win for the Blue Jays. They're coming off a loss against Burton and Iola, who are fighting for those playoff spots there. It's really good to see. I think overall, what I took from that, it's really good to see Garrett Leroy really, really come in clutch for the Blue Jays, and he scored all 3 of the third quarter touchdowns on runs of 4 to 91 yards, and he threw a 75-yard touchdown to Jose Garcia. He had I believe more than 300 yards. He was on the honor roll this week. This is the kind of play that we expected from him in the beginning of the season, and I think he's really finding his stride right now, which is a good thing for Snook. You want that guy to find his stride at any point of the season, and I think he's really finding it right now. They showed it against Somerville, who is a tough team. You have Johnny Legg and Jacoby Woodbury. That duo is lethal by themselves, and I think being able to stop them was really, a nice thing to see from Snook's defense. But offensively, having Garrett in there, really putting up some yards and really, coming in clutch for them, like I said. So it's really cool to see. Really nice win for Snook. But what about you, Alex? What game caught your eye?
Yeah, Brenham shutting out Pflugerville Connolly. That district's not. I don't think it's the best district, but how about Brenham? We don't really talk about them. They're kind of on the fringe of the area that we cover, but they've won 5 straight games. They're 4-0 in district. They started the season with the 2 losses to the Magnolia schools, and it's shaping up like they're going to have a district championship game in the last week of the season out on the road against Leander Rouse, which is probably going to be a really hard game for them. But, they got Elgin this week, a winnable game. Brenham's starting to figure it out. And we knew coming into the season that they had some pieces where they've got some talented guys, especially on that defense. And so, Brenham really starting to figure it out. That's a tradition-rich school. We're used to seeing them in the playoffs. So we'll see if the Cubs can keep it rolling. Hey, how about us? We finally did pretty good in our picks last week. I think both of us went 22-2. How about that?
I know, and I'm still in last place. I know, I don't know, but hey, we can't be good at everything, I guess.
Hey, we're making up ground. I need Cease to accidentally pick somebody that's not favored to win, but
I know, Cease and Primo.
Yeah.
We need both of them to have it.
All right, Abigail. We'll close with this. What is one game you're watching this week?
Yeah, so Cameron will be at Lorena. I think this is going to be a really good, game. Lorena is, I believe they can clinch the district title with this win. They're 3-0 right now at the top of district standings. Cameron is tied at second with the Little River Academy at 3-1. It's a big chance for the Yeomen here. Obviously, not only to push Lorena down a step, but just a big win for the program. I think with all the turnaround that they've had to do this year and the start that they had, I think the fact that this game is I believe a close one, I think shows how much they've improved throughout the season and how much talent they really have. They're playing on a short week almost. They had to play Friday they had to play Saturday instead of Friday because of official problems.
Right.
So that was kind of a weird deal. I guess officials were scheduled, or they weren't scheduled and nobody called to make sure. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I believe it was homecoming for Cameron. So it's kind of a weird deal. They had to play Saturday, obviously. So they're coming off of a unexpected short week, and then they're playing the number 1 team in the district. But I think it might come down to being a shootout between the 2 offenses. I really think Cameron's defense is going to have to step up if they want to beat Lorena. Obviously, we mentioned earlier, Lorena almost beat Franklin Franklin won 27-20. It's a really tight game. We know they're a good team. And Cameron lost to Franklin 41-21 in the second half. So I think Cameron's defense is really going to need to step up here if they really want to stop Lorena. Lorena's only allowing about 14 points per game. They're scoring 41 points per game, including 2 shutouts. So I think they have a great offensive line. I think Cameron's defense is going to really have to be more physical and really slow them down in the beginning to get this game going. But I think it will be a good game. I believe that will be a nice game. And who knows what Cameron can do? Maybe it's an upset here. It's a big win if they do that. So we'll see what they're able to do on Friday.
Well, the game I've got my eye on, Normandy traveling to Alto, Yellow Jackets, which I think they're the Yellow Jackets and their color is orange. Yeah. I don't understand that.
Oh, that's
but
interesting.
Anyway, they're on the road. This is a big game. Normandy's 3-0. They've really found their footing with Isaiah Jones coming back, which obviously when he was out, they weren't doing very well on offense in a couple of those losses. But now that he's back, they're hitting their stride. I mean, that offense is electric. And, this is a big road game. If Normandy wins, that's going to set up a district championship game at home next week against rival Centerville. Yeah. And we know how good Centerville is. And man, oh man, I mean, that's going to be the last week of the season. And that's going to be a great game. If it's between 2 4-0 teams. I'm trying to think, who does Centerville have this week? They've got Grapeland, who's 1-2, probably going to win that game. Yes. I feel confident Centerville will probably win that game. But yeah, if Normandy can get past Alto, I mean, we're going to have a big one over there in 11-2A1 next week. So here come the Panthers.
Yeah.
They had the great season last year, but don't be deceived. They might be 5-3, but they're better than you think. So, all right, Abigail, I think that's everything. Who knew we could do this on our own? But yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm really excited. I think a lot of games are, playoffs are on the line here. This is when we start really getting into who, if they win, what happens, if they win, what happens. So it's a really exciting time right now. Obviously some big games locally and things like that. But I'm really excited that we're getting close to that playoff time, the end of the regular season, which is those matchups are a little bit crazier. But exciting.
All right. Well, that's going to do it from us. Be sure to like, subscribe, listen to our podcast on Apple and Spotify. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our high school football coverage this week and throughout the rest of the season. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. For Abigail, I'm Alex. We'll see you next week.